I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Nimrod Kozlovski, founder and CEO at Cytactic, providers of a cyber crisis management and readiness platform. Learn more at cytactic.com. Evolution Equity TV is brought to you by Evolution Equity Partners, an international venture capital investor partnering with exceptional entrepreneurs to develop market-leading security and enterprise software companies. To learn more about Evolution Equity Partners, visit evolutionequity.com. Nimrod, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Nimrod, your company, Cytactic, has a great story, but you also have a great story. So before we talk about the company, we'd like to learn about you. You have a mix of law, academia, technology, and cybersecurity experience. So tell us about that.
Oh, thank you so much. You're very kind. Indeed, I had a journey that combined both computer science, some entrepreneurial background, and a lot of academic life around law and computer science. I actually started as an officer in an intelligence unit, cybersecurity intelligence unit. So I did my technology career around cybersecurity. Then I did my PhD at law, Yale Law School. I actually focused on cybersecurity law. After clerking for the Supreme Court, for the Vice President of the Supreme Court, I actually did my JSD, it's a PhD in law at Yale Law School, focusing on cybersecurity law. And then I did my postdoc in computer science. I was focusing at Yale Computer Science Department on predictive security and conditional privacy, and also did my postdoc at Oxford, focusing primarily on internet studies. And I was back then very much intrigued by predictive security. I was a venture capitalist for a while. I was leading actually cyber investments for JVP, one of the Israeli largest cyber funds, which led me to start this startup, which is my third startup. I did one in online monetization, the other was around cybersecurity, and that's my third startup.
So let's talk about Cytactic. Company has a very exciting story. Your website claims that you have the first digital cyber crisis management and readiness platform. And now our industry talks a lot about incident response platforms. So help us understand the difference between the two of those and exactly what you're doing.
It all started when I was asked to be a bridge coach, to lead actually the response for a large crisis around publicly traded companies, critical infrastructure, Fortune 500 companies. So I dealt as a bridge coach in this crisis. And what I've realized, shocking to me, that most companies, when they have something which might turn into a crisis, let it be an extortion, ransomware, application takeover, a large sensitive database stolen, quite often companies, when they're addressed with this potential crisis, they start calling ad hoc consultants to help them. And there's so many consultants around the table. There are the IT people and the forensic and the intelligence and negotiator and legal and PR and HR, business continuity. You have so many experts. And what I've realized shockingly, while most companies do know to call the incident responders, which is the technical team, to do primarily the forensic investigation and to establish the timeline of the incident, they quite often do not have the full team for the crisis management. And at the end of the day, cyber crisis is quite often not a technical crisis. It's a business crisis. Most damages are actually associated with business interruption, with churn, loss of customers, lawsuits, drop in the share price because of messaging. And all of these are business aspects to be managed, not only incident response. So it's true. There are quite a few incident response platforms that are dealing with how you analyze the logs, how you analyze the data, how you establish a timeline. That's very important. That's an essential part of crisis management. But all the business aspects of it, how to manage the crisis, how to make sure that you do an information sharing with all the stakeholders, how you collaborate between the stakeholders, how you orchestrate the tasks, how you take decisions with the limited visibility of the crisis, all of it are actually in the field of crisis management. There's no technology in this domain. Companies are still using ad hoc consultants and pen and paper to manage a crisis.
Wow. Well, what you're doing is timely. We've seen a lot of companies where, from a technical perspective, maybe they get an A or an A plus insofar as, how they respond technically, a D minus or even an F insofar as how we're seeing them respond to some, ransomware attacks. People are running in different directions, not talking to each other. So sounds very interesting. So you have a background in venture funding as well. I didn't realize that. And your company recently raised a $16 million seed round from Evolution Equity. How did you meet them? How important is that? Tell us a little bit about the relationship with them.
I couldn't be more proud and happier than raising capital from Evolution Equity Partners. They are the elite fund when it comes to cybersecurity. I had such an incredible honor to present to this team of experienced cyber experts that led companies, build kind of like security protocols. That's amazing. I was very privileged when we realized that we have a good product market fit and actually started getting more and more clients to our platform. I was approaching Yuval Ben Yitzhak, a general partner at Evolution Equity Partners, whom I know for his leadership role in technology and security. He was the CTO for AVG. He was the CTO for Outbrain, some leading companies. And I outreached to him and had the opportunity to present to him our solution. Interesting enough, at that point of time, several other funds expressed interest in the company and actually liked to lead around. But when I met Yuval and I saw that it aligned with the way that they see the market need, with a lot of actually work that they've done already to establish that there is no solution yet in the market to get ready, respond, and recover for major incidents like ransomware or extortion attacks. And they were looking for solutions. I realized that's a match because that's a leading fund. They already established kind of like with their research the need. And now we can come with a platform that answer this need with the market validation. We're working with some leading design partners that validated the need already using it. And I said, hey, that's a great fit. And we started actually working with Yuval to do a deeper work to better understand the market, better understand the demand, the competition, the pricing point in order to get ourselves kind of like with the best kind of like strategy and the best go-to market to actually get a company, to materialize the potential. And working with Evolution Partners was an incredible journey because throughout the investment, I had the opportunity to meet the various partners. I had the opportunity to get mentorship and advice from each partner on their role, from the business aspect to the go-to-market, to the product, to the roadmap, and incredible introductions, even in the journey, to some of the leading figures in the cybersecurity markets and in the industry to better validate the product and better calibrate our messaging. So that's an incredible journey so far.
Well, we had Yuval on with us for a panel. He was fantastic. So I know exactly what you mean. And they are wonderful people. And we've interviewed quite a few of their portfolio company founders and CEOs. So let me ask the funding itself, what exactly is that going to be used for? Is it for ongoing product development? Is it for market expansion? Exactly what?
Sure. So I think there are two main purposes for the funding that we did. First of all, I think we still have a lot of ideas and dreams around where the product can go. We're already getting the product used and revolutionize the way that companies prepare for a cyber crisis, train and simulate and manage a crisis, and we love it. But I think there's still a lot in our vision that we want to achieve. And so part of it is going to further kind of like roadmap of the product. But most of the money proceedings are actually going for go-to-market. So far, we had design partners and early adopters of the platform. We were very excited about that. The platform serve now publicly traded companies, large organizations to get ready for a crisis, to build their resilience, to train and simulate, and also to manage a crisis. But there's a huge potential, given the new regulation out there that requires company to be resilient and get kind of like the plan ahead of time, onboard the team, simulate, do maturity assessment, and also the requirement now from the insurance companies. We realize it's a huge market, primarily, by the way, in the US and Western Europe. So most of the capital is in order to build a team on the ground, to go to market, to better kind of like establish our presence. So most of it is would be actually driven towards business scaling.
So I don't think we could have a conversation now about crisis without bringing up the IT outage, airlines, banks, you name it. What's running through your mind when, you saw this a couple of weeks ago and it's still roiling industries right now?
We tend to understand now that security companies, cybersecurity companies, are not only a solution, they're also a risk. And they're a major risk because cybersecurity companies tend to request permissions, the way that they operate, which is very sensitive, and they can be actually a point of failure. We understand that when you have an agent that requires kind of like escalated privileges or actually operate at the operating level system, That's a vulnerability. Certainly when it's distributed all over and it populates kind of like immediately. Second, we understand that the mechanism of automated updates for a platform means that here it was just an IT outage, but it could have been an attack similarly if someone was just kind of like distributing at scale corrupted code. So we understand the vulnerability. Second, we understand what once was called the monolithic culture. We are all dependent on the same tooling and same software, and we all fail together like domino blocks. And that's a problem that we all kind of like dependent on a piece of software that if just slightly changed can now be a vulnerability for all of us. That's a problem. But most important for our part, we've realized that companies do not have a business continuity plan, how to keep operating during an IT outage. And that's a big problem because it just happened to be that that was a gentle outage. Immediately, everybody realized what's the reason. Immediately, there was a kind of like remediation. So companies could be comfortable in the way to resolve it. But just imagine another IT outage, which would not be so easy to understand, or it might be an intentional attack. The fact that airlines, hospitals, bank, critical infrastructure were actually out of service and didn't have any business continuity plan for a time of IT outage is actually a very alarming reminder for us how dependent we are and that we need to get plans ahead of time. We need to simulate such an incident and see how it performs. We need to have a business continuity plan that is relevant for a cyber incident or relevant for kind of like IT incidents, and not only the traditional BCP plans, which are good for earthquake or a virus, but not as good with kind of like IT systems are down. And I think that that should be like a wake-up call for all of us as an industry. It can't be that essential facilities and life-saving operations or very critical and dependent operations don't have a second plan, don't have a BCP plan. And I think the first wake up call was taken by the UK government, announced immediately after the IT outage that they're going actually to demand it now. It will be a regulatory requirement that if you are certain facility, you need to come with a business continuity plan. You need to simulate it. You need to assess the maturity. It can't be that organization just kind of like assuming that if there'll be an outage, we'll operate.
Just about everything you're talking about speaks directly to boardroom executives, C-suite executives. Most cybersecurity companies who come on with us, they have a message for the CISO, and that's very, very important. But it's really hard to elevate, and you don't really have to spin that. You have something that is of authentic interest. So it's just so refreshing, to hear somebody speaking that language. Do you call on CEOs, boardroom executives? Is that, part of the business model, part of your target?
Thank you very much. You're so generous with your words. But indeed, working with Evolution partners, we realized in the beginning we have a different kind of a product and a different kind of an offering. Most actually cybersecurity products try to sell to the DevOps or SecOps, and actually they climb up the ladder to get to the CISO, to get some of the CISO's attention. We think that we have a different kind of a product that resonates best actually with the board of the directors, with the C-level. At the end of the day, quite often the CISO would find the product as a solution for the communication that the CISO has with the board of directors or the C-levels. Because first of all, the board of directors are now required to have such a solution. Why so? Because current litigation demands that the board would exercise effective oversight over cybersecurity. And now 50% of the boards in the US have actually a cyber oversight committee. What does the cyber oversight committee need to do? They need to make sure that they know the risk, that they have a plan, that they come kind of like with the incident response and crisis management plan, and that they actually tested it and implemented the findings of where the shortcoming is. That's for them would be to have an effective oversight. So boards are asking them, they are being consulted by lawyers and consultants saying them, hey, in order for you to actually meet your oversight requirements, you need to ask the CISO to bring such a tool. Second, the conversation the CISOs now have at the boardroom is a conversation around risk, conversation how we mitigate them, and how well we are planned to be resilient. Like the new word out there is being resilient. And The board is asking how we're resilient, how we would survive if we have an incident, how long it would take us to overcome the incident, what would be the damage. And we actually tooling the CISO with a way to demonstrate resilience. Second is about regulation. If we're to look at regulation, cybersecurity, a few years back, regulation was a technical regulation, was liability regulation, who might be liable. Now regulation around cybersecurity is primarily governance rules, how you need to govern the risk, how do you need to actually make sure that you're resilient in terms of procedures and flows. And that's exactly what we bring. We cater to this regulatory demand. So if you look at new regulations, NIS2 in Europe, the DORA, the Cyber Resilience Act, the SEC regulation, they're not saying that you can't be subject to a cyber attack. They're just saying that you need to have a process and govern it to make sure that you acknowledge kind of like your risk, you address them with a plan, and that you make sure that you're resilient. And I think we address into this regulatory need. And third, we see increasing liability for CISOs, for C executives, for actually not being diligent, for being not in good faith preparing for an incident. So we also kind of like make sure that we address this concern that they might be liable. And last, I don't imagine that 2 or 3 years from now, insurance companies would let you to get a cyber insurance unless you have a product in our category. I think that we'll see more competitors, we'll see newcomers to the market. But at the end of the day, just as you would not be able to have your, your annual tax returns without some use of a software, if you come pen and paper, I cannot imagine that any company would be considered to be reasonable if they don't deploy a tool in preparing for a crisis and in managing a crisis. So I just think we're addressing actually to a need which normally comes from the board, the C-level, the CFO, the general counsel, and normally we help the CISO in conversation with all these stakeholders to make sure that they come the best they can, with the best tooling, with the best methodology, well prepared. So we help the CISOs and actually the communication they have with the executives in the company.
Well, Nimrod, you're so authentic. There was a siren in the background, and normally I would tell our staff, edit that out, but I think it was perfect. And I assume you didn't stage that, but it's the last thing that a boardroom executive or a C-suite executive wants to hear. So that was great. We appreciate you coming on, and we hope we can catch up with you later in the year and find out more about where Cytactic is.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you the Cytactic story. Thank you so much.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. Evolution Equity TV is brought to you by Evolution Equity Partners, an international venture capital investor partnering with exceptional entrepreneurs to develop market-leading cybersecurity and enterprise software companies. Visit evolutionequity.com to learn more. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.